It is an absolute honour and privilege to stand here today with Siri to commemorate the centenary of what, if not was, is widely acknowledged as the start of the Tan War. We honour and salute the brave actions of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade of the Irish Republican Army, who bravely stood up to not only the British colonial occupation, but also the right-wing elements masquerading as republicanism. Today we also commemorate the centenary of the sitting of the First Dáil, where Republicans who had been elected as MPs to Westminster in the election held in the previous month met in Dublin's Mansion House to declare Ireland to be an independent nation and to establish their own parliament and declare its democratic programme. The democratic programme was a progressive recognition of the rights of labour, although much of its explicitly socialist content was removed by the right-wing elements that were the majority and continue to be the majority as long as capitalism continues to condemn millions to poverty, unemployment, homelessness, inequality, oppression, exploitation, hunger and disease. The brave volunteers of the Irish Republican Army who lay at this very spot and had had enough of this colonial oppression. This year many important events will be commemorated, including in April the centenary of the general strike in Limerick, where workers delegated by the strike committee were in control of the city, a progressive radical development which was described as the Limerick Soviet. Sometime before Christmas 1918, members of C&E companies of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade of the Irish Republican Army received intelligence reports that a large quantity of explosives was due to be delivered to Tipperary town. They determined to seize the explosives for use in revolutionary actions against the Crown forces. A number of these fine volunteers of the Irish Republican Army were becoming restless and felt that the army was a talking shop and were becoming too close to the Sinn Féin party, whose Republican credentials were highly suspect. How little has changed in 100 years. They felt that Sinn Féin was made up of a right-wing coalition of dual monarchists and home rulers who were more interested in power and wealth. Yet again, how little has changed. These revolutionary visionaries of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade of the Irish Republican Army decided to take matters into their own hands and make history and force revolutionary change. And that they did. And us members of that most respectable class, the working class of Ireland, can never ever thank them enough. The volunteers set about putting their plans into action. They put Laura Breen to work on Soloheadbeg quarry to monitor the shipment of explosives. The volunteers could only speculate on how many members of the Crown forces would be guarding the load. Be under no illusion, and do not listen to the bile coming from revisionists. The RIC, like the RUC, like the PSNI, are the Crown forces. They were then, as they are now, the armed wing of Britain's colonial empire. On the day of this audacious ambush, Paddy Dwyer was posted to watch explosives in Tipperary town. And once he sighted the explosives being loaded onto a cart outside the Crown Force barrack, he counted the number of RIC Crown Force members accompanying the cart, along with 2 council workmen. These brave volunteers lay in wait behind a white thorn hedge on a cold day in January, not a plush leather seat in the Mansion House, as others claiming to represent the Republic did. When the cart containing the explosives arrived at the ambush site, the brave revolutionary fighters of the Irish Republican Army opened fire on the Crown forces, and after executing the members of the Crown forces, MacDonald and O'Connell, they secured the load of explosives in the name of the Irish Republican Army. The courageous and brave volunteers of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade had struck a resounding, magnificent blow against British colonial rule in Ireland. The Brits declared Tipperary a special military area. There was a massive security clampdown as they declared martial law, and it was the first time the Crown forces used an airplane in their vain attempts to track the volunteers. A reward of £1,000 was offered, later raised to £10,000. It was never collected. The good people of Tipperary shunned the Brits' attempts to get people to inform in the IRA, just as they did when the pro-British Free State in 1931, when Free State Superintendent Curtin learnt the Irish Republican Army's price for treachery, as did others in this county. People in this county were executed by the IRA for giving evidence against Republicans. It showed that patriotism was not yet dead in the county that fired the first shots in the Tan War. I would like to take this opportunity to say that it is wrong to call on people to give information to the British occupation regime in Ireland. It is treachery, and this treachery has historically carried out certain consequences for those unfortunates caught informing. It is still wrong to inform and to give information about those who are resisting British occupation. It is wrong to condemn the actions of those resisting British occupation. Today, we see those who ask people to inform and condemn revolutionary actions against the Crown Forces now try to convince their gullible electorate of their Republican credentials and stand as Republican candidates. Believe me, a leopard never changes its spots. Informing is treachery, pure and simple. The good people of Tipperary did not inform on Sean Treacy, Sean Hogan, Don Breen, Seamus Robinson, Ty Crow, Mick McCormick, Paddy O'Dwyer, Michael Ryan, Sean O'Meara, and many another man and woman, and to their credit, as this was the beginning of another phase in a long fight for the freedom of our country, a fight that gallantly continues today. After the successful ambush, Don Breen stated that Sean Treacy had observed, the only way of starting a war was to kill someone, and we wanted to start a war. So he intended to kill some of the policemen, whom he looked upon first and foremost and most important branch of the enemy forces. The only regret we had, there was only 2 policemen in it instead of 6. The brave volunteers of the IRA, by taking action against the Crown Forces, understood that the driving force behind Ireland's subordination to Britain was the economic interest of the British ruling elite, the bourgeoisie, that the subordination would continue in a bourgeois-dominated free state, and that real independence and true democracy for all the people of Ireland required a socialist republic. 100 years ago, when the first Dáil met, it was dominated by the Irish bourgeoisie. This statement, this element attempted to ignore, even condemn, the actions of the IRA and Soloheadbeg, leading one of the participants in the ambush to comment, the people had voted for a republic, now they seem to abandon us who tried to bring that republic near. For if we had taken them at their word, our former friends shunned us, they preferred the drawing room as a battleground. Those comments ring true today. The people voted for a republic in 1918, and today we don't need a poll, vote or referendum to tell us what we already know.
Hear, hear.
Polls, referendums or votes will not secure a socialist republic or liberation. The 3rd Tipperary Brigade of the IRA taught us that. I suspect that the revolutions of the Solohead ambush will have nothing but scored on the keyboard warriors today, and rightfully so. The first Dáil adopted a Declaration of Independence and recognised Labour interests by adopting a democratic programme. The programme declared the right of the Irish people to the ownership of the soil, resources, wealth and wealth-producing processes of the country, and the right to private property was subordinate to public right and welfare. We have witnessed in the last century the failure of the neo-colonial Free State to implement this programme, never mind the burying of their heads in the sand when it comes to the ongoing British occupation of the 6 counties. Immediately after the ambush by the revolutionaries of the IRA, the right-wing reformist elements of the army attempted to force the revolutionaries to go to America, which they refused to do, as these brave men had the courage of their convictions. Their actions were the actions of revolutionaries who meant what they said. These were the actions of revolutionaries acting in the interest of the most oppressed. These were the actions of revolutionaries who did not trust the motives and actions of the bourgeoisie and realised that actions speak an awful lot louder than words. Sir Sean Treacy defied efforts by the bourgeoisie to go to America, stating, any fool can shoot a pillar and run away to America. Taking the correct revolutionary position, Sean Treacy urged that a proclamation be issued directing all British troops to leave Ireland. Instead, Dáil Ireland did nothing, leaving Don Breen to comment, if we waited for orders from Dublin or GHQ to do an ambush, there would never be a fight. The very chair and Minister of Defence of the First Dáil, sitting in the plush surroundings of the Mansion House, condemned the volunteers of the IRA who ambushed the Crown Forces at Soloheadbeg. It was not until April 1922 that Dáil Ireland, at the bidding of Erskine Childers, declared hostilities against Britain, despite the 3rd Tipperary Brigade giving the British a very clear message over a year earlier. Serious salute them for not only standing up to the British, but to the right-wing reformist elements within republicanism. Seru, like the revolutionaries of Soloheadbeg, shun politics that are just another name for parliamentarianism and electoralism. Seru stand opposed to all forms and manifestations of imperialism and capitalism, which in the Ireland of today include Leinster House, Stormont and their rotten councils. Like Connolly, Seru believed the present form of society is based upon the robbery of the working class. Seru wished to see an end of British rule and capitalism abolished. Seru believed that the Quisling administrations in Leinster House and Stormont are nothing more than a machine for the oppression of one class by another. The struggle for national liberation cannot be separated from the class struggle. The enemy will never give the people the tools of its destruction. That is why it is folly to put any faith yet alone confidence in the tools of the enemy, polls, referendum or votes for their bodies. Revolutionary politics and constitutionalism are incompatible. Syria calls for a national debate on Irish reunification. Syria advocates that such a debate should take place from within all sections of Irish society and in every corner of Ireland. We call for all Ireland popular assemblies to be established, which would facilitate meaningful input from the working class in the debate on Irish reunification. Syria undertake to facilitate and participate in such popular assemblies throughout Ireland. We believe that such popular assemblies should be bottom-up, firmly rooted in localised areas throughout Ireland. We believe that this approach will provide the best mechanism to advance the debate on Irish reunification. Brexit has reunited the debate around Irish reunification and raised it to unprecedented levels, both nationally and internationally in recent times. The illegal occupation of our country and usurpation of our national sovereignty is the root cause of conflict between Britain and Ireland is now centre stage. As revolutionaries, it would be remiss of us not to recognise the fact. We in Syria firmly believe that only a movement steeped in working class unity can end the exploitation and oppression that the volunteers of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade stood against here 100 years ago when they engaged the British Crown Forces. Only then can we resolve the national question of Irish reunification. We believe that the popularisation of a vision of a republic based on socialist principles and values arising from a national debate on reunification will act as a catalyst to provide the necessary wherewithal to achieve our ultimate objective of a socialist republic. The rotten capitalist system that is in place rapes the working people. Today, these rotten vulture funds own a collective €10.3 billion in assets, yet incredibly only pay €250 a year in taxation. The estimated losses to the Free State are in the region of 500 million as a result of lucrative tax breaks given to these funds by successive right-wing capitalist neoliberal Free State governments. The bourgeoisie blame the working class, peddling the myth that the people have lived beyond their means. That these vulture funds can buy up huge amounts of property and then evict those living in them is no accident or oversight. It's capitalism working as it was intended. It is a policy of the British, pure and simple. The rotten Irish bourgeoisie is in a race against time to get its system fighting fit to take on the huge shocks that are coming. The Free State and the imperialist European Central Bank are pushing the banks to clear their bad debts by whatever means necessary. This means principally selling bad loans to vulture funds, which then evict families to recoup what they can. In plain language, the indebted working class are to be made to pay for the last crisis just so that the capitalist can ready itself for a new crisis. There is little more to be said in condemnation of a corrupt system that can only perpetuate itself by the continuation of human misery. It needs smashed and its exponents held to account and made face revolutionary justice. At the same time as the banks are turfing out indebted homeowners, rents in the cities are spiralling out of control. Today the class enemy has changed little. Instead of the Brit absentee landlord, it's the Free State banks, American vulture funds and the European Central Bank. Syria wish to see capitalism abolished. Syria believes that the existing system of quisling governments is nothing more than a machine for the oppression of one class by another. It has been an absolute honour today to stand at this hollow spot with the Irish Republican Army engaged the Crown Forces 100 years ago. We all should leave here today reinvigorated in our commitment to the struggle to achieve the Socialist Republic and take pride that we are all part of the unfinished revolution, unfinished business, just like the gallant revolutionaries who lay behind the white thorn hedge at this very spot. This revolution will continue until its inevitable successful conclusion. It is 900 years coming. The revolution says, I was, I am, I will be again. Birigi bua agus ar aile céile.